Okay, friends, this is Frederick Henry of the Frederick Henry Show, and I just want to have a little experience of the day because I think it's reflective of the American society, and I think it's important for us to talk about it. So, I take airplanes, and I have to travel. So, yesterday I get a note in the airplane company. I'm not going to name them. It's not fair to them. And they say to me, well, there's some weather out there, it's some wind and some rain, and you have a 6 a.m. flight, and maybe you don't want to take that flight. Maybe you want to change the flight to some other flight, and we'd like to give you the opportunity to make that choice. So here's the thing. Try checking in. So I checked in. I tried checking in on the app. They wouldn't let me. I tried checking in on the app again. They wouldn't let me. They kept pushing me to a page. Make a choice for other times of the day to take a flight. And I said to the app, like I'm talking to this right now, I don't want to take another time. I don't want to pick another flight. I want to check in for the flight. But the app will not allow me to check in for the flight. So I had to go to this page that said, pick A or B or C. And so I picked A. And they said, thank you. Then they said, and what do you think about B? Which was a different concept. And I said, well, but you must pick B. So I picked B. And they said, well, thank you very much. And they said, well, what about C, just in case? And I said, well, I don't want C. But they said, well, in order for you to check in, you have to pick C. So I picked C. And then they put me back and they said, by the way, you've chosen 3 choices, but you must come to the airport in order for these choices to be executed. And it may be that when you get to the airport, we, the company, no longer need choice A or B or C, and so you will get on your first choice before A or B or C. And I said to myself, this is a lousy thing because I have to get up at 2 o'clock in the a.m. to travel to Cincinnati Airport at 3 o'clock. It takes me 90 minutes to get there, go through TSA, to go to a plane which I may not be allowed to get on because I chose A or B or C, but if they don't need me to pick A or B or C, then they will put me on the plane anyway. So just to review that, I buy a ticket a month ago, I pay for the ticket a month ago, I'm a 175,000K member of the airline. I only use this airline exclusively. And they say to me, well, we may let you on at 6 o'clock a.m. after you traveled 90 minutes and gone through TSA, or we may not let you on because there's some thunderstorms out there, and we may choose to allow you to have A at 7 o'clock, B at 8 o'clock, or C at 9:30. However, we may not choose any of those and put you on the 6 a.m. flight anyway, because that's our decision, because that's the way the passengers arrived. And so, do I feel pushed around? Do I feel shoved around? Do I feel like people are taking advantage of me? Yes, I do. Okay, now I get on a plane. Now, it used to be wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't wear a mask, the federal government will come after you. The marshals will come after you. The captain of the plane will throw you off the plane. You will lose your seat. You will lose your flight. You will lose your privileges. And you may never be allowed to get on the plane again. I heard that at least 4 times every single flight. That's gone away. But now I hear, for the good of all passengers, please remember that put your little bag under your seat and put your big bag over your head. And if you don't have a big bag, then put both little bags under your seat for the good of all passengers. And with a cheery voice, the flight attendant says, let's all help each other out. Okay, I travel with a crossbody, which is about the size of a small purse, and a satchel, which is the size of a small briefcase. And I put the small briefcase in the overhead above my seat, and I put my satchel underneath the foot space under my seat. And a person gets on, a man and a wife get on the plane. She has a backpack in the front of her body. She has a backpack in the back of her body. He has a backpack on the front of his body. She has a backpack on the back of her body. And they both have a wheel on. So they put, that's 6 bags. They put 1 bag overhead for each. And they put the 2 front, which one it was, in the overhead. So that's 4 bags in the overhead. And then they have, on my side, they come over and put the other 2 bags from their bodies on my side. So, but not in my niche. They put it on my side, but not on my niche. Okay, and they're sitting comfortable. They have nothing under the front seat in front of them. He's stretching out his legs, all that kind of stuff. And the flight attendant comes by and he says, well, he says to me, who has this small briefcase-sized bag in the overhead? I said, I do. And he said, well, for the good of all, would you like to put that under your seat? I said, I already have something under my seat. He says, well, this is a small bag. Do you mind if I move it back here, like 3 seats back? I said, why? He says, well, we have to make room for this fellow's baggage. I said, wait a minute. I don't want my bag moved. He says, well, it's a small bag, sir. I said to him, well, I understand that, but all I have is what's allowed, a small carry-on and a crossbody, which is a purse. He said, well, we all have to do everything for the good of all, so everybody has space. I said, well, I have my space, a very small space, and I would like it to remain in the overhead. He looked at me and he said, well, you have attitude. I didn't want to answer because, number one, I don't want a problem. Number two, I don't like getting angry. And number three, I was afraid that they might tell the captain to come back and throw me off the plane because I wouldn't move my briefcase-sized bag out of the overhead so that a fellow who had 6 bags could put his bags in the overhead. Now, a guy comes in after that, and he's sitting next to me, and he has a bag, which is 1 bag, a backpack, and there's no place in the overhead for him, and so he says, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And the flight attendant says, well, put it under your foot, under that. Well, it barely fit under. The guy had to scrunch into the spot. So when the flight attendant came by, I said, sir, I said, there are 6 bags over there, of which 2 of them are probably not allowed. Why don't you have the person move their bag and put it under their seat so that this fellow who only has 1 bag can put it in the overhead? He said, well, sir, we all have to work together to help each other so there's space for everybody. Now, here's the thing. We all have to work together. Obviously, the person who brought in 6 bag wasn't working together. He didn't care about me. He didn't care about my seatmate. He had 6 bags. He wanted those 6 bags on the plane. The flight attendant said, well, they're big bags. They take up a lot of space. All of you folks with little bags, you have to move your little bags out of the way so this guy who's overpacked, overstuffed, and overbagged, he has 6 bags, not 2, has to have space. Now, I don't know where that comes from. I don't understand the concept. If we all have to work together, that means all have to work together in order that all have their space. I packed lightly. I have small bags. I have flown every single week for the last 2 years. Every weekend, every single weekend, I fly. I know what's required. And so I only pack enough in a small bag and 1 small crossbody. If people overstuff their bags, overpack, and come onto the plane because they don't want to pay the $35 check-in fee for a bag, and they don't want to check their bag at the gate because the gate attendant is afraid to tell them they have too many bags and they are not allowed a front body and a back body, a front body and a back body, and 2 rollies for 2 people, 6 bags. Is that my problem? Well, according to the flight attendant today, that was my problem because I wasn't working together so that all of us have space in the overhead, and all of us can get all of our baggage on the plane. I got all my baggage on the plane. I had 2 small bags, a crossbody and something the size of a briefcase. These people had 6 bags, each one of them an overstuffed backpack for 4 of them, and 2 roll-ons. But I'm supposed to make room for them by shoving the stuff under my seat so that I'm cramped in my seat so that we can all work together, so we can all have room for all of our bags. You know what? I sound sarcastic, and I am. And maybe you've been in the same place. Now, why do I even broadcast this? I think that we have to stop being nice. The flight attendant said to me, "You have attitude." I have attitude. Yes, I have attitude, because I'm doing what we all must do so that all of us can have room for their bags. The other person, he's asking me to move my little tiny bags so that the other person who doesn't care about me or anybody else can be comfortable in order that I can be scrunched up because I'm working for all of us, but the other person isn't. I think it's time for us to congratulate those who stand up for each other and those who cave in to each other and give in to those who abuse others have to be told that they're wrong and I and you don't have attitude. Okay, now let's go on from there. Now we're in the plane and a fellow is sitting in front of me and he's looking at some seats in the exit rows, and the doors are closed. They're giving the briefing, and he signals the flight attendant. He's in the middle seat. He says, "I want to sit over there on the exit row." And the flight attendant says, "Go ahead." Now, did he pay for those seats? As far as I know, when you sit in an exit row, you pay a little bit more money. But this guy didn't pay a little bit more money. He was sitting in the cheap seats. But because the doors had closed, and because no one was sitting in those seats, and because he was the first to jump at the chance, the flight attendant said, "Oh, go ahead, sit in the exit row." Now, was I offered that opportunity? Was anybody else in the cabin offered that opportunity? But this person who was on top of it got a chance to sit in the exit row for no extra charge just because he jumped at the chance to sit in the seat. Now, when I brought this up, I did bring it up with the flight attendant. The flight attendant said to me, "Well, sir, no one was sitting in those seats, so what's the problem?" Well, the problem is I wasn't offered the chance to go to those seats. The other people in the cabin weren't offered the chance to get in the seats. Only this person was given the chance to get in the seats. I really find the idea that we all have to work together so that all of us can have equity and equality and all that is baloney. Because the people, the flight attendants in this case, and the gate agents in the other case, are not enforcing the rules so that all of us can have work together so that all of us can have place and space. That's my issue. The all only refers to those who are doing the right, and those who are abusing and excessive and absurd, they have to be accommodated at my expense. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm tired of doing it so that the people who don't know how to pack, who don't know how to obey the rules, who get away with it every time, can get away with it again and again and again. Because those, in this case the flight attendants, who are supposed to impose the rules, only impose the rules on those who are obedient, and those who are not obedient get away with it because we don't want to have an episode, do we? Okay, let's go on from that. Now we get to the grocery store in New Jersey. I don't live in New Jersey. I happen to be working in New Jersey. So I'm unprepared for the latest legislation. Supposedly, this is legislation. It's not an executive order, supposedly. It's legislation. So I go to the grocery store and I buy an item wrapped in 5 items which are all of them in plastic, including a plastic bottle for the soda, a plastic bottle for the milk, a plastic bottle for the meat, plastic wrapping for the meat, and 2 other items in plastic. And I get to the counter, and he checks it out, and he says, that will be so many dollars. And then I said, well, he says, do you have a bag? I said, no, I don't have a bag. He said, well, how are you going to get it out of the store? I said, wait a minute, hold on. Why don't I have a bag? He says, well, you can buy a bag for 50 cents. I don't want to buy a bag for 50 cents. He says, well, there's a new law in New Jersey. We cannot give you a plastic bag, but we can sell you this reusable bag for 50 cents. I said, I don't want the reusable bag. He said, well, it's a very nice bag. I said, I don't want it. He said, well, we can put it in the cart and take it to your car. I said, that's nice, but I don't have a car. He said, what? You don't have a car? I said, no, I'm here on a visit, and I don't have a car. He says, well, then you have to carry it some way, so buy a bag. I said, I don't want to buy a bag. Well, we can't give you plastic. I said, don't you have paper? Well, no, this is in Kroger, a Stop and Shop. I'm going to name them Stop and Shop. By the way, the previous was United Airlines. United Airlines was the previous, and this one was Stop and Shop. So I said, well, I can't carry those 5 items in my hands. I have to travel almost 4 blocks to my hotel. I don't have the ability to carry them, and I'm not going to buy a bag. He said, well, what? He said to me, what is he supposed to do? I said, take it back. He said, what do you mean take it back? I said, take it back. I don't want it. He said, well, don't you want these? I do want these items. And I said, please note that every one of the 5 items in front of you all of them are encased in plastic. But because of a law in New Jersey, so-called, maybe it's a regulation, but it's a law according to them, I cannot have a plastic bag, so I'm supposed to carry these in my hands. Can I put them in the cart and roll the cart 4 blocks to my hotel? He said no, because the cart has a device attached to the cart that locks the wheels when it leaves the parking lot. So if I don't have a plastic bag, if I don't bring my own bag, if I'm unwilling to pay 50 cents for their bag, then I can't buy my groceries because the law says that I can't have plastic, although the manufacturers of the 5 items I was purchasing all are allowed to have plastic. So what's more dangerous, that flimsy plastic bag they give me at the grocery store, or the very hard plastic that each one of these items is wrapped in, including the soda bottle and the meat product and the cheese product and the milk product? So I, again, am, for the good of all, I have to not have a bag to carry the groceries because we have to save the planet when all these other people can have plastic, and that's okay for them, but not okay for me. I thought we were all working together so that all of us could have a good thing. But it seems that I'm the one who has to give, and they don't have to give. So why doesn't Stop and Shop offer paper bags? If you can't have plastic, then have paper. I have to be able to carry my groceries. So the idea is, if you can't do that, then you can starve. We don't care. The planet must be saved. The oceans must be saved. The atmosphere must be saved. But you can starve. We don't care about that. But we cannot have plastic. Where does this stuff come from? It comes from the idea that all of us are docile and obedient, and we kiss butt, and we allow ourselves to be pushed and shoved around for some kind of esoteric, philosophical, ecological, green idea, which we must obey and we must do at our own detriment because other people say that they know best for us, and they know best for the planet, and they know best for the manufacturers, and they know best for the people they have stock in, and you and I must obey, and that's that. Well, you know, folks, the whole purpose of this rant is to say enough is enough. We must say to people, even if we agree, stop pushing us around. Stop shoving us around. Stop stomping on us. We're tired of it. We will decide what's good and what's bad, and we will decide what we're allowed and what we're not allowed. I said to the fellow, take the items back. He said, what? I said, take the items back. I don't want them. But, I said, don't but. I don't want them. And I walked away, and he had to undo the whole thing, and he had to put the products back in the shelf or what he had. I didn't care, because I was being oppressed. Why should I just tolerate that? I didn't tolerate it. I said, no, I don't want that. I said to the flight attendant, you will not move my bag. I don't want my bag moved. I said to the clerk in the grocery store, I don't want the items. If you're requiring me to pay an extra 50 cents, actually in this case it would be for 2 bags, an extra $1 because, well, they're reusable. I don't care if they're reusable. I don't want them. So take the items back. I'll go to a place in another state, because I live in many states, where I can buy it and get a bag. I'm not pro-bag. I'm not pro-pollution. I'm not pro-plastic. But I am anti being shoved around, pushed around, and stomped on. So I think it's time for all of us to say to people, no, enough is enough. Stop pushing me around. I will not tolerate it. I'm not going to just go, yeah, please, kick me one more time in the head. I don't want that. And I don't think you should either. Okay, my friends, this is Frederick Henry. You probably haven't listened to the end. And if you have listened to the end and you're enraged, then good. And if you're from a state and a place which doesn't do these kind of things, or you don't fly on airplanes, you don't have these experiences, good for you. Praise God. But if you ever do, stand up, please. Stand up and speak out. And don't be pushed around and kicked in the head, because you do not deserve that. Others have to discipline themselves just as much as claimed that you have to discipline yourself. This is Frederick Henry, and you've been listening to the Frederick Henry Podcast. Thank you very much for listening.